Hello. All right. Hi there. Good morning. It's Thursday, and we're about to jump in and start this webinar. I see people popping on, so I'm going to wait a minute to get going until a couple of more of you are on here. All right. Hey there. I see some familiar names. And all right, let's see. I am going to share my slides with you, and then we are going to jump right in because we have so much to do today. So. All right, everybody. All right. So I'm Bree. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. I am so honored and excited to see you on this Thursday morning. I guess it's Thursday afternoon for some of you. I see people on the East Coast here and some other places. So wherever you are, thank you for joining. And we are going to have so much fun together today. We're about to dive into the material. But before we do, I want to let you know that at the very end of our time together today, I am going to invite you to work with me one on one to help you overcome your hormone imbalances. We have a special gift for you that I think you're going to like. So please do stay on until the end. And I also wanted to let you know that it doesn't matter where you are. My clinic has been online since 2013. So we work with women all over the United States and, in fact, all over the world. So we definitely can help you no matter where you are. Now, we're going to be talking about the real reasons that you can't overcome your hormone imbalance symptoms. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of really important information with you today that could help you understand why you haven't been able to clear your hormone symptoms after trying for years. So please drop in with me and put aside any distractions. Let's turn off our phone ringers, close other internet browsers or that Amazon page. It'll still be there waiting for you when we're done. Close your door, whatever it is you need to do to stay focused with me for the next 30 to 45 minutes. Also, I invite you to type questions along the way into the chat box, and I will look forward to answering them at the end of our time together. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so first, ladies, I want to be sure that you are in the right place. So if you've been told that you're in perimenopause, that you have a condition called PCOS or endometriosis, if you've been told you have PMDD or PMS, a thyroid problem, or adrenal fatigue, or if you struggle with symptoms like irregular and heavy periods or periods that are missing, painful periods, menstrual headaches or migraines, premenstrual water tension or bloating, adult acne, hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, anxiety or depression, mood swings, fatigue, brain fog, memory issues, changes in skin or premature skin aging, hair loss, low libido, or hormonal weight gain, then you are in the right place. So, before we talk about what all these things have to do with hormone imbalance, I want to share you a little bit about my story. So, this is all very personal to me. That's why I went into hormone balance as an issue. I didn't get my first period until I was 17 years old. And at the time, not one of my healthcare practitioners had even asked me or helped me address this. I knew it wasn't really normal because all of my friends talked about having their periods, and I would just kind of get quiet and awkwardly avoid the topic. So when it did finally come, it would show up maybe every 6 to 9 months. And for reasons I couldn't quite name, I had a lot of embarrassment and even some shame around this. I knew I always had to work harder than other girls to keep my weight normal, even as at a young age. And around age 20, just when everybody else's skin was finally clearing up, I started having awful breakouts along my jawline and around my mouth. My mood was really variable. It was all over the place. I even started to experience panic attacks, and I struggled with fatigue daily. As I was working my way through my grad school degree in my 20s for my medical degree, I started struggling with severe nightly insomnia. I would lay there and toss and turn for hours, dreading every night, and finally falling asleep anywhere between 1 and 3 in the morning. And just waiting for my thoughts to start racing when I couldn't turn my brain off and get to bed. So the last straw was when the sleep struggle started to be accompanied by hot flashes at night. I was 24 years old at that point. What was going on? So I looked for help from my doctor, from my gynecologist, from professors at the Chinese medicine school I was attending, from colleagues who were naturopathic physicians. And while one would maybe help my skin be slightly better or help me have a little bit more energy, no one had really been able to help connect the dots between all these symptoms and pinpoint that I had a pretty severe hormone imbalance even in my early 20s. So, realizing no one else was going to fix this for me, I started to integrate functional medicine into my Chinese medicine approach, adding in lab testing and nutrition. And when I finally realized that I did have hormone imbalances and eventually diagnosed myself with a syndrome called PCOS, that was the turning point for my eventual recovery. As I started to find my own answers, I started to see my experience reflected in not just some, but most of the women I saw in my private practice. I saw women with extreme mood swings, paralyzing anxiety, sleepless nights, exhaustion, hot flashes, skin problems, and weight gain, despite doing all the right things to be healthy. And one of the most common things I would hear each of these women say is, I just don't feel like myself anymore. So, one of the things there's 3 main things that I've learned about hormone imbalance after being in practice and working with women, for 15 years. So, the first thing is that hormone issues are unfortunately not well understood by mainstream medicine, and as a result, they are often ignored. It's not a physician's fault, it's just that the training, isn't provided for to look at these things more holistically and to look truly at the role they play in women's well-being. It's often women have the experience often of feeling brushed off. A woman can leave her physician's office feeling unheard and often with a prescription in hand for birth control or antidepressants, neither of which will address the true underlying issue. And often they don't fully resolve the symptoms either. So, women are often told that hormone imbalance symptoms like PMS during our reproductive years or symptoms related to perimenopause and menopause are normal and should just be expected and tolerated. You'll get through it. This too shall pass. Well, just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. So, symptoms arise when hormones fall out of balance, and by using a holistic approach, complete balance can be achieved and all these symptoms can disappear. So, the other issue that I see is that mainstream practitioners will often use the wrong testing. Comprehensive hormone testing is much more sensitive and specific type of lab testing than standard testing that will reveal any underlying hormone imbalance that could cause a variety of these life altering symptoms. And the final issue is that even if these physicians do identify that there's a hormone problem, a lot of these doctors don't understand that our hormones are not an island. So they don't exist in isolation. In order to achieve hormone balance at any age, there's 4 systems and 4 requirements that depend on these other body systems. We need to have stable blood sugar. We need to eat enough of and the right kinds of fats and nutrients. We need to have a healthy microbiome and gut health, and we need to have good liver detox function. So, again, back to why you're here today. Earlier, I talked about the signs and symptoms that you're in the right place. And so, if you have one or more of these symptoms, it's likely that you have a hormone imbalance of some sort. And that's exactly what we're here addressing today. So, before we talk about what kind of hormone imbalance, I want to talk about what is hormone imbalance. So, hormones are tiny, sophisticated chemical messengers, and they are the means by which our body communicates from one area of the body to another area of the body in order to make something happen in a different tissue. Hormone imbalance is strongly impacted by what we eat, when we eat, how we exercise, how we sleep, the toxins we're exposed to, our body weight, either too high or too low, and the stress response we have to things that we perceive and experience. These are all factors that we have some degree of influence over and can impact with the choices we make. How these factors impact our overall hormone picture is crucial at any age in a woman's life. So, if you have strong adrenal hormone balance, for example, that's our stress response system, if you have good gut health, if you have strong detoxification function, and if you eat and exercise in balance with your own body's needs, then you'll likely sail through your periods, your fertility, and your menopause with far fewer symptoms or challenges. So the when it comes to sex hormones, when we talk about balance, there's three ways that we evaluate this, or three ways that this is impacted. So there's production or quantity. So we need to have enough hormones, not too many, not too little. And then there's balance. We need to have proper ratios of estrogen to progesterone, our main female sex hormones, relative to each other. And then we also have to have good clearance. So, how we clear or metabolize our used or old hormones to make way for fresh new ones is really important. And that helps to make sure that we don't build up excessive hormone levels. There's four main categories of hormone imbalance that I regularly see in practice. And these are low progesterone, low estrogen, high estrogen, and post birth control syndrome. So, let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into each of these. So I'm going to tell you about my client Daphne, who I met with a few weeks ago. And so the day that we met, she came in and said, she had woken up that morning and was really glad that she wasn't totally exhausted all day because it took her 2 hours to fall asleep the night before. Her mind, she just couldn't get her mind to turn off, and she felt really anxious and irritable and laid there tossing and turning. She wondered if she was about to get her period because she had skipped it the month prior, which had also happened a few times in this past year. But now she was really bloated. It was definitely a stretch pants day. And her breasts were feeling heavier and sore. And she had that feeling like she might get a headache later on if she wasn't careful. She wondered what was going on, that she had missed that period. But she did tell me that she had had a pretty stressful month the month prior, and maybe that had something to do with it. So here's what's going on with her. Progesterone is nature's anti anxiety hormone, in addition to helping to regulate our menstrual cycle. And so when progesterone is in balance with estrogen, it brings feelings of peacefulness and can promote quality sleep. Sometimes after age 35, women don't always ovulate each month because our ovaries are starting to not respond as well to the signals from the brain. That's normal and natural, and eventually, menopause is defined by our ovaries stopping to respond. And that's also normal and natural. So, as this occurs, our progesterone gradually declines, and eventually we stop having a period. The problems occur when it gets so low that we develop symptoms. Progesterone often also dramatically drops when stress levels are high. And this is evolutionary. So, the kinds of experiences that caused stress were generally life threatening: not having enough to eat, something that's going to eat you, or you got an infection and spiked a high fever. So, if you're in danger, your body is reading it's probably not a safe environment to bring a new baby into, and probably not ideal to have a toddler in tow when it comes to your own survival. And our body really considers progesterone just to be a hormone of reproduction, even though we know it has all these other impacts on our own bodies. So, this sudden drop in progesterone levels can lead to feelings of anxiety, insomnia, especially characterized by difficulty falling asleep or by shallow sleep, increasing PMS symptoms, mood swings, and headaches, and actually hot flashes, interestingly, even though we're always told that hot flashes are associated with low estrogen levels. So, low estrogen, let's talk about what that looks like. So, I'm going to tell you about Tanya. So, when we met a few weeks ago, she told me that she was in brushing her teeth, looking in the mirror that morning, and she had had the thought that her skin looked kind of dull and tired, and that matched kind of how she felt lately. Her mood was low and heavy a lot of the time. And she'd woken up 3 times the night prior and had been tossing the covers off. And she noted that she just felt kind of warm all over. She'd had a frustrating evening earlier that day, and she was curious if that was related to her poor night's sleep. So, what had happened was that she and her partner had finally made time to have a romantic evening together. And when they tried to have sex, it was just uncomfortable. They had, that had actually been happening somewhat regularly lately. And it seemed like her vaginal tissue just felt drier or more sensitive. And so sometimes sex felt kind of like sandpaper, not fun. She also told me that as she stood there, she knew there was something that she couldn't remember to do that day for the life of her, and she stood there, like, for the next 5 minutes as she was going about her activities, not being able to grasp what it was, which was really irritating to her, and she noted that that also had happened more often lately. She also had felt a twinge of discomfort in her urinary tract and wondered if she should go in early to get a test for an infection. That had actually also happened a few times this year after having sex, and she wanted to get ahead of it this time before it turned into a full blown painful experience requiring antibiotics. So, what's going on for her? There are estrogen receptors throughout our bodies, in our uterus, in our vaginal tract, in our bones, in our heart, in our brain, and in our skin. As we age, naturally, the production of estrogen declines as a natural part of aging. But sometimes this drop is too rapid or it drops too low, and that leads to symptoms. Too little estrogen in women can cause women to feel depressed, confused, start to lose the sharpness of their short term memory, as estrogen plays an important role in brain function. And then it can also cause hot flashes, vaginal dryness, insomnia characterized by frequent waking, joint pain, bladder issues, and bone loss. Now, on the flip side of that is high estrogen. So, high estrogen can look like my patient Carla. So, Carla, when I met with her last month, had said, "Gosh, my PMS has been out of control this month." She told me how that day she'd had to consciously compose herself as she walked into the office that morning. And she knew she had a meeting with her team, and she knew that she needed to try hard not to verbally snap at some of the people who had been irritating her. Um, she was she was actually also feeling cramps coming on and knew that her period was coming and it was going to be a rough one. The month prior, she had bled through a super tampon every hour for the first 2 days. It was a really heavy flow. She could barely keep up with it. And she had also had a major headache both days. She knew that she had been diagnosed with some fibroids. Maybe they had grown and they were causing the bleeding to get heavier. And she wanted to know what I thought about that. Adding to her irritability was the fact that she was fairly sure she'd gained about 6 pounds this month, despite the fact that she'd been eating really clean and making it a priority to get moving, to exercise. And she swore it was all going to her hips and thighs. So, what's going on here is that there's too much estrogen in relationship to the amount of progesterone that she has. And that can lead to a condition called estrogen dominance. So, we need both of these hormones and we need them to be balanced in relationship to each other. So they actually support each other's function and they actually counterbalance each other's function. So estrogen dominance often looks like mood swings, anxiety, cycle irregularities, PMS, low fertility, cramps, fibroids, cysts, heavy periods, weight gain, headaches, and water retention, and sometimes a zapped sex drive and hot flashes and perimenopause. Can also look like fibrocystic breasts, and of course, it can also increase the risk of certain types of estrogen driven cancers, like some kinds of breast and uterine cancers. And what's interesting is it can be triggered in three different ways. So it can be triggered by not having enough progesterone or not enough to oppose the amount of estrogen you have, even if it's a normal amount of estrogen. It can be caused by poor detox or clearance of the normal estrogens we make, and it could also be caused by exposure to estrogen like compounds in the environment that are added to the total load of the estrogen that we make internally. So, this could be like plastics, both BPA and BPA free plastics, certain pharmaceutical drugs, cosmetics, cleaning products, pesticides, and other chemicals. So, the last one I want to mention is post birth control. And so, this is unique in that it's a flat line in both estrogen and progesterone levels. And in this woman, what's happening is that there's no ovulation. So, I had a patient I was working with this. Her name was Danielle, and she was really frustrated because she had acne that showed up since she went off the pill 6 months prior. And she had had a little bit of mild acne as a teen, but now at almost 30 years old, while going on the pill had cleared up that acne, it seemed back with a vengeance and maybe even worse than it had been initially. She'd been on the pill for about 10 years and had decided to come off of it because she thought she might want to consider getting pregnant sometime in the next year or so and wanted to make sure that her hormones were balanced and her body was ready. Except that then her period had never restarted. Even worse, her hair had started thinning. She started getting migraine headaches a few times a month. And even if she did want to try to conceive, she had no sex drive to speak of. She wasn't sure if it was coming off the pill or dealing with all these new symptoms, but she was definitely feeling kind of down and anxious and wondering if her body would ever return to normal. So, with this syndrome, what happens is it usually starts 2 to 6 months after going off the birth control pill or birth control patches or hormonal IUDs. And women can get acne or hair loss, loss of a period, or failure for it to show up. So, um, especially if it lasts longer than 3 to 6 months after stopping the pill, that it's not showing up. Depression, anxiety, and mood swings, headaches, migraines, heavy periods or painful periods that didn't exist before, low libido, and interestingly, digestive symptoms like gas, bloating, and dysbiosis. Birth controls may disrupt our normal gut flora and create an environment that allows for overgrowth of less desirable bacteria and yeast, and can actually lead to intestinal hyperpermeability, which is also known as leaky gut. So, before we go on, you may have noticed that there's a slide for high and low estrogen and low progesterone, but there's no slide for high progesterone. And that's because high progesterone levels really only occur from taking supplemental progesterone as a medication in too high of a dose. It doesn't exist naturally inside women's bodies. So, the most important thing I want you to take away from today is to know that hormone balance is real, it's treatable. And if you've ever been told that it's in your head or sent away with birth control pills or antidepressant medications, I see you. And it's not your doctor's fault. Most practitioners just don't know about this condition or what to do to fix it. But you can't treat hormone imbalances properly unless you know what type of hormone balance you're experiencing and unless you make sure that the other body systems that are essential for hormone balance are functioning well. So that's what I want to talk about right now. So, root causes. So, essentially, I mentioned that we needed good stress hormones, good levels of nutrients, blood sugar balance, gut health, and healthy liver detox that are essential for hormone balance. And this is really the crux of functional medicine. It's the idea that these body systems don't exist in isolation, that they're all dependent on each other. So the truth is, your hormones don't just break. While it's true that eventually our ovaries will stop responding and we'll make lower levels of all the hormones mentioned, that is natural and normal, and it doesn't have to be a rocky and symptomatic transition. In our reproductive years, before we reach the naturally healthy transition into menopause, those years shouldn't be defined by dealing with symptoms related to our menstrual cycles and fertility. So, in order to avoid those, all four of these need to be in good working order for us to have a symptom free experience. And the truth is that most of the women I work with will have two or three or even four of these issues going on to some extent at the same time. So we approach fixing it by identifying which of these issues and addressing each and making sure that the key nutrients that allow each of these functions to work well is adequate. Let's do a little bit more of unpacking around each of these systems. So, stress. Okay. So, one thing I know after working with women both inside and outside of the United States is that American women seem to have more responsibility on average than any other woman on the planet. It's a mixed blessing, uh, but often, and this is not true for every single individual, but often we're responsible for raising the kids, being the family doctor, the family chef, the family manager, a source of comfort to our friends and family, and without the support of a tribe playing all the roles. And that's often in addition to holding down a career. Now, in contrast, for example, Danish women they get 5 paid weeks of vacation off every year and are not shy about taking every minute of it. And they also, in studies, report fewer menopausal related symptoms. Are they connected? Yeah, you bet. If you get 50 August off, then your hormonal stress response system gets a recharge and a break. We don't take breaks, we're on all the time. Do you feel a sense of urgency in your days? I know that at times in my life when I'm not conscious about it, I do. I have work to do. I got to do the shopping. I really want to fit in that workout. I got to remember to email so and so. Even if your life is pretty mellow and I got to make the green juice, I suppose I'm supposed to do some yoga right now. I'm really supposed to fit in that meditation. It's about the way that we go about approaching things. So, in a lot of other countries, the stores still close at 5 and they open later in the morning, and people go home to enjoy a relaxed dinner with their families. Now that's inching closer to 7 p.m. The world is changing and becoming more and more like the norm in the United States. And we normalize this, we even glamorize it. Being in go mode taxes our adrenal hormones. So even if we're playing too much, just fitting too much in can be taxing. We are enough as we are, but the American sentiment is quite the opposite. So sometimes we have to start saying no to things we don't absolutely have to say yes to in favor of our healing. Time and space are essential for healthy hormone balance. So, if our baseline is some level of stress, then cortisol, our main stress response hormone, floods your system. The production of cortisol, which is our body's survival hormone, takes priority over other hormones that our body considers less important to your immediate survival. So, even though critical hormones like estrogen and progesterone are essential for supporting bone health and brain health and cardiovascular health, mood, sleep, and metabolism, in other words, thriving, our body considers progesterone to be primarily defined by its essential role in becoming pregnant and staying pregnant, otherwise known as survival of the species. So, quite simply and elegantly, if your brain thinks you are in danger, it prioritizes survival of you right now over survival of the species, which can be put off until tomorrow when you're not under immediate threat. So, the problem is that we have changed and designed the world that we currently live in, and it's a much faster moving and with higher stimulation than our biology has been able to adapt to, at least in a way that's sustainable. We're just not designed to live in a world that's this fast paced and that demands our attention from all angles. So the truth is that our hormones will not be in balance if our life is not in balance. When I work with women, we definitely take time to discuss, what areas of our life could use some love, how we move, how we eat, how we sleep or rest, our spiritual connection or connection to nature, relationships, the work we do, where we have space and time to express our unique creativity. And it's our job to take responsibility for the areas that you either have control over or have some amount of choice in. So we have to, at some point in the work we do, look at our lives and make choices and changes, work to heal resentments if they're there, forgive ourselves and others. Sometimes say no to too many things on our plate. So we can choose to be free in the moment to some extent. It just requires willingness. So the bottom line is that when women feel stressed, the end result is depletion of progesterone, and that allows its counterpart, estrogen, to dominate, and that results in hormonal chaos and symptoms. What we're talking about is what you may have heard referred to as adrenal fatigue. However, this is truly a brain issue and nothing wrong with the adrenal glands themselves. The brain becomes desensitized to increased prolonged stress and sends the wrong message to the glands, and they simply carry out the orders that they're given. So, when cortisol is chronically elevated, a lot of times we'll see increased inflammation, anxiety, insomnia, abdominal weight gain, insulin resistance, sugar cravings, severe mood swings, and feeling chronically kind of stressed or ramped up, or feeling wired and tired at the same time. So, after a period of ongoing or extreme stress, cortisol levels can plummet and stay low. And the adrenals will produce enough cortisol to keep us functioning, but not enough to allow us to thrive. If your cortisol is low, you'll likely feel burnt out, exhausted, more easily triggered, have little to no bandwidth to respond to anything that comes at you unexpectedly. And you might have nighttime waking with a hard time returning to sleep, less resilience to viruses, infections, or even common cold. And your body will still prioritize your stress response hormones over your progesterone, leading to the same reproductive hormone imbalance. So, bottom line is that you can have symptoms if your cortisol is too high or too low. So, while I initially mentioned four types of female hormone imbalance, high and low cortisol are also two types of hormone imbalance that can accompany any of those types, and we always have to look at them. So, when these are part of the full picture, they also need to be addressed in order to bring all the hormones together into a lasting balance. So, let's talk about blood sugar. When blood sugar is too high, our pancreas secretes a hormone called insulin to carry the sugar out of the bloodstream and into the body's cells, and it converts that into excess fat for storage. The production of insulin to move glucose into the cells is normal. That's part of our metabolism. But when it happens repeatedly and in high levels, as it does for many Americans, the cells develop a resistance to the constant insulin and refuse it entry, just like the name insulin resistance. Too much insulin in the bloodstream leads to inflammation. So there's some signs and symptoms of high blood sugar, like fatigue and drowsiness after eating, intense craving for sweets after meals, having a waist circumference or girth that is equal to or larger to the hips, having a hard time losing weight, having migrating aches and pains, or having difficulty falling asleep or frequent waking during the night can all be signs of blood sugar dysregulation. So, I want to talk about PCOS. So, PCOS is the most common reproductive ovulatory disorder in the world, and it is an issue related to high blood sugar or insulin surges, and it can create excess testosterone in women. And so it's very common. It's actually 10% of women is the estimate, although we don't exactly know. And some common symptoms of PCOS are difficulty or inability to lose weight, although this can also exist in women who are quite lean, which is confusing. Infertility or suboptimal fertility, irregular menstrual periods, usually due to infrequent ovulation, anxiety or depression issues, and things like acne or male pattern hair loss or growth. There are definitely other signs and symptoms, but I want to, just for the purposes of our discussion today, kind of overview it briefly. So, even in women who don't have PCOS, both high blood sugar with subsequent crashes or low blood sugar from skipping meals or under eating act as stressors in terms of how your brain interprets them. And that can lead to the same alterations in cortisol that we just discussed a moment ago and can cause the same disruption downstream with our progesterone production. It's just less drama because we're interpreting the stress differently. So let's talk about the gut, the role of the gut and hormones. So there's several roles, but one of the most important ones has to do with the life cycle of estrogen in its journey through our body. Estrogen is primarily produced in the ovaries, and then it's circulated in the blood, and the estrogens make their way to target tissues in the breasts, the brain, the bones, uterus, and elsewhere. And then they finally travel to the liver once they've been used, where it's then broken down and deactivated. And in a healthy system, the detoxified estrogens are deposited into your bile, which is then secreted into the intestines to help with fat digestion, and then exits the body with your bowel movement. But this all depends on you having a robust, diverse microbiome and regular, healthy bowel movements. So, the main way that the bacteria in your microbiome regulate circulating estrogen levels is through the creation of an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. And what this enzyme does is it breaks down already detoxified and inactivated estrogen into its free or biologically active form. So, if there's too much beta glucuronidase made in the intestines from these certain bacteria, then the estrogens that were bound to the bile, getting ready to leave your body, instead get reabsorbed and recirculated. And that can actually happen in really high level. So, having radically elevated beta glucuronidase is typically the result of an overgrowth of the wrong kinds of bacteria, and that leads to a state of estrogen dominance. I see this frequently in practice that someone's hormone imbalance is primarily a gut problem. So we need those specific beneficial bacteria to produce estrogen-like compounds from the foods we eat as well. For example, we've all heard about, flaxseed or flax oil being good for hormones, and that's because of a component they contain called lignans. And that food is commonly recommended for female hormone systems and for breast health protection and in menopause. And that's because the bacteria convert it into a plant sourced estrogen like compound in our body that is active in our receptor sites. But that doesn't happen if we don't have the right gut bugs. So, liver detox is just as critical. Now, detox happens in other organs as well, but the liver is the main important site that we're talking about and also the main one that gets compromised. So, the liver is an incredible detoxifier. However, it requires sufficient nutrients and amino acids from proteins to do so. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of juice fasting as a method for detoxification. It's not a bad way to give your gut a break, but it is definitely not a great way to promote active detox of toxins. In the modern world, we encounter environmental toxins on a daily basis. That's just kind of the facts. Xenoestrogens are chemicals that act like estrogens in the body, but that interfere with our own hormone balance and our own hormone activity in our receptor sites. They're commonly found in PCBs, which are man made chemicals such as BPA and BPA free plastics, often used in food packaging and kitchenware, parabens and phthalates in skincare products, perfumes, makeup, sunscreen. And these are just a couple of the places we encounter these. And they're also added to our food supply in the form of pesticides and herbicides. So, due to nutrition choices or just decreased nutrient level in our foods from soil depletion, regular consumption of alcohol and caffeine, all of these things impact our liver function. And so, it's often slightly compromised, and we struggle to clear these compounds and our regular self manufactured hormone load. There's two main phases of the liver that work to detoxify toxins and excess hormones from the body, and both of those phases need to work actively in order to complete detoxification. And both of those are dependent on an adequate supply of high quality nutrients, antioxidants, and amino acids. And our first phase tends to get stimulated more easily. And so a lot of us will get backed up in the second phase. And the liver will then recirculate those partially broken down hormones into the body. And this contributes to hormonal noise at the receptor sites, which in turn contributes to hormone imbalance. So when we're adding to the circulating load of the new hormones our body has made in the meantime, we can end up with cumulatively too many hormones, especially estrogen, in circulation and all the symptoms of estrogen dominance. So now that you have a name for what's going on in your body and what you've experienced, and some idea of some of the things that might be causing it, we can talk about what you can do about it. But first, I want to touch on something I see in clinic, which is that many times I have patients who have tried so many things to get better, and nothing has worked. So, right now, you might be experiencing some excitement or hope about this information and what you've learned about your body tonight. Whether you've tried birth control pills or antidepressant medications or some herbs a friend told you about, or even some progesterone cream you found locally, there's a huge reason why those things didn't work in the past or maybe only helped somewhat. And that leads me to what can we do to fix this for good? So, how we fix it is by being proactive and taking the reins, taking ownership of our own health, and really believing that you both deserve and can get the help that you need to clear up your symptoms, and even more, that you deserve to feel great. We have to discover the root cause of your symptoms. And in order to do that, we have to get the proper testing to determine your hormone imbalance type and the root causes. And then we have to take action steps to address the roots of your problem and so you can go on to live your life. So, let me tell you a few stories about real patients that have had these experiences. I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples of women I've worked with and how they used this science step by step to get off the roller coaster of their hormone symptoms. So, Lauren, was a healthy 42-year-old woman when she came to see me a few years ago. But in the year and a half prior to us meeting, she had been suffering from really severe hot flashes, mostly in the evening, but they had started to occur after meals and through the day as well. Her periods had started becoming sporadic around the same time, and she'd had no period in a few months when we first met. Now, Lauren was a busy, driven executive with a lot of responsibility. She was really high functioning. She really loved her work and didn't mind deadlines and the organization it required, but she did have a history of insomnia. Specifically, she had trouble staying asleep and woke to pee on average twice a night. And she thought this was normal because she'd had it for 10 years. The problem was that recently was struggling through the day on very little sleep. So she used to power through the day on some snacks and a lot of coffee, frankly. And she felt fine in the early years. But now she needed the caffeine just to get through the day and keep going. And she felt like she was barely hanging in there. She was barely functioning. And she actually cried during the appointment when she said that she'd realized that she'd accepted this as her new normal and that she had a fear that she would never really feel like herself again. And really, she was worried that other people at her work who were used to be her being this fearless leader were noticing her performance declining. So also her anxiety had decreased and she had just had a panic attack for the first time in her life about a month ago. And she was so accustomed to being extremely competent, the kind of person you could really, count on to get the job done, that she just didn't recognize who she was becoming and it scared her. She had also developed a couple of food sensitivities, a little bit more subtle, but she would get stuffy nose or maybe slightly puffy face after eating some foods, and occasionally she would get diarrhea. She noticed that her sex drive had decreased. And she had tried some homeopathy and an elimination diet. She had cut out dairy and gluten for a while. She tried some meditation, and all of these had actually helped her feel a little bit better. But we finally did some testing because it was obvious that she needed more immediate help. So she had been struggling with these issues that had slowly crept up starting 10 years ago, and now she was beginning to completely fall apart. She shared with me that her lack of sleep and her anxiety and irritability from her symptoms were kind of causing her to be short tempered with her wife, and that they had previously enjoyed training for bike races together, but that she felt so run down that she just couldn't do it. And so they had stopped spending that time together on the weekends. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back when she realized she really needed to get some help. So when her testing came back, her hormone testing showed that we found extremely low progesterone levels. Her stress hormone testing showed that her adrenal stress hormone, cortisol, was flatlined the whole day and night. In fact, she was only making about 25% of the cortisol that her body actually needed each day. Her stool testing, we found several issues with her gut. We found a parasite named Giardia, and also an overgrowth of a fungus called Candida, and low digestive enzyme production. And those were impacting her hormone balance and also contributing to the food sensitivity symptoms being exacerbated. So you might be thinking it sounds really bizarre or rare to have a parasite, especially because you didn't hear me talk about any big gut symptoms with her. But I'll tell you, I find them every day on testing in my clinic, even in people with little to no digestive symptoms. And I think of these as kind of like an app running in the background of your system, taking up bandwidth and slowing down the system. So we ran some testing to understand which foods were causing her symptoms and temporarily left them out until we had worked on removing the parasite and the candida and really repairing her gut. And then we also found that she had some sluggish detox pathways. And this totally made sense because, in addition to the gut infections, which created their own toxins, she and her partner owned a car repair business and it used a lot of toxic chemicals. And they had lived in an apartment above the shop for several years prior to that. So this explained everything. When we knew what was out of balance, she started on a healing protocol to bring the hormone levels back up to normal levels and to restore the adrenal function back to optimal rhythms. We put her on a diet plan to help stabilize her blood sugar through the day, and we got her off the caffeine crutch. And we also gave her a program to clear the parasite and yeast overgrowth out from her intestines and rebalance her microbiome. And these were all done in sections that followed each other. So within 6 weeks, as she started some of these, her hot flashes already were gone, and the night sweats decreased to really minor, manageable amounts. And that helped her start sleeping better again. By the time we got her through the Candida program, her food reactions were almost gone, and we started to support her detox and liver. Within a few more months after that, her energy started to be restored. She got back to doing all the things she loved again. Her mood and sex drive improved naturally once she was feeling better overall. And she started training again with her partner. As a bonus, she mentioned to me the last time we'd met that she had lost about 7 pounds around her, mostly around her abdomen, without dieting or radically increasing her exercise. All right. So Mikaya, another client, she's a 29-year-old web designer from Spain, or 29 when we started working together. And at the time, she hadn't had a period in 2 years. And she had been on and off the pill for 10 years since being diagnosed with PCOS back in her teens. And this was the first time that she had stopped the pill, but not had her period come back. So she had gone on the pill to regulate her periods and to help deal with the chronic acne she had on her chin and jawline. And those things did change while she was on the medication. But despite not having a period, she did get monthly mood swings around the same time every month. And it caused her to feel really depressed and irritable and moody. She had low energy and a tough time staying lean despite following a really good diet and regular exercise. She shared with me that the scars on her face from the acne really deeply impacted her self esteem, and that not having her period made her feel like something was wrong or broken inside of her. Now, separately from this, she'd also been suffering from constipation, almost as long as she could remember, so her whole life. And she traveled constantly. She was a digital nomad and loved exploring, but she noticed that um, she wasn't waking up feeling refreshed anymore. She had a much harder time recovering from jet lag. She used to just recover, bounce back within a day, and now it was taking more like a week. And so this was taking a toll on her ability to get her work done. And as a business owner, she was starting to feel overwhelmed. So we ran testing right away for her hormones, both adrenal and female sex hormone panels. We also ran a month long panel for female hormones because we wanted to figure out if and when she was ovulating. And we tested her thyroid hormones because she had some symptoms that suggested that might be an issue. So, also, due to her gut symptoms, we ran a stool test and something called a breath test for something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a condition that's often behind syndromes like IBS or chronic constipation or episodes of diarrhea. So, what we found was this: her hormones showed that she had both low estrogen and low progesterone, so post pill syndrome. We knew that was on top of her already existing PCOS. We also found a mild hypothyroid issue, and her month long cycle showed a flat line with almost no hormone fluctuation through the month, which told us that she was not currently ovulating. Stress hormones, we found that she had really, really high levels of cortisol all day and night from stress. And you can feel both fatigued and wired when you have this pattern. And it can also cause difficulty getting to sleep at night. So then it kind of perpetuates itself. With her gut, we found that the gut testing showed a bacterial overgrowth called H. pylori, and she did have SIBO. And those were causing inflammation that was also contributing to elevating those cortisol levels and disrupting her female hormones downstream. Finally, we saw that she was deficient in some really important nutrients like B12, B6, and magnesium, and those impact female hormone production, but also are essential for liver detox pathway to be functional. So her treatment was we gave her initially a program to help calm down the high cortisol and reprogram the rhythm through the day. That definitely helped her feel more calm and enhanced her mental clarity and started to improve the quality of her sleep. We layered on top of that a treatment for the H. pylori and the SIBO in her gut, and that really started to help her have more regular bowel movements. And we gave her some nutrients to help replace the ones she was deficient in. After that, the next time we met, we started progesterone that she would take. So, bioidentical progesterone, which is the identical hormone to what we make in our bodies. And we started this in a microdose fashion, and she would take it for part of the month to actually help jumpstart her cycle after being on the pill. And 2 months into that, she had some mild spotting near the end of the cycle, which was really encouraging. So at that point, we really dove into her nutrition and lifestyle. We reduced her exercise intensity and frequency for a little while and raised her calories just a little bit and had her start doing a daily meditation practice for just 15 minutes to help her manage her stress response and support the program to lower the cortisol so that it wouldn't continue to disrupt her female hormone production. I also mentioned that she should get acupuncture weekly if possible from a local practitioner, which she did. And a month later, I got this email from her, which is to date one of my favorite emails I ever got from a client. So it was filled with all kinds of exclamation marks and emojis. And she wrote, let's see, here it is. She wrote, "I finally got my period. It's been a long wait, 3 years and 3 months since stopping the pill. And I cannot be more filled with gratitude and joy. After I added the progesterone program to what we had already begun, I started to notice some little changes in my body, although I didn't expect they'd be a prelude to my period. After all this time, I had trained myself to release all expectations. My skin was oilier, I felt breast tenderness, such as the one I would have had as a teenager. And the best part, my sleep has been the best since I remember. In parallel, I have kept going to my acupuncture sessions, which have also been focused on hypothalamus ovary connection. And with holidays in between, I've been exercising less intensely and probably eating a little bit more freely. I wanted to share this amazing news, which wouldn't have been possible without you and your team. The biggest thank you and profound gratitude for helping me to reconnect with my body." So Mikaya went on to complete her program, including some detox support, which helped clear up the remaining acne and actually helped her lose about 10 pounds that she had been struggling to keep off. And to this day, she's still cycling and doing really well. Okay, so for the last 45 minutes, I have been sharing with you this concept that there's a deeper science behind hormone imbalance. There are known predictable causes. It's not just your fate or luck of the draw. And most of these factors are things that we have control over or at least input in. So I've shared some examples of women just like you that were able to use this deeper science to their advantage to overcome this unique challenge. And now I want to do the same thing for you. So I would love to invite you to work with me one on one or to work with my team. I have two doctors who work hand in hand with me. We have a clinical rounds weekly, so I have my eyes on every case, including the ones that I work with directly. So I would love to invite you to work with us to get this handled in my clinic. And right now, I'm going to go through the exact process that I just shared with you, which is what we would do together. So, we would want to gain a new understanding of hormone imbalance and what's really driving your frustrating symptoms, expose the underlying root cause of your hormone imbalance, and implement clinically effective strategies to treat the cause rather than just mask your symptoms. Do a deep dive into the hidden factors that we've been talking about and how nutritional status, chronic stressors, gut health, blood sugar balance, and detoxification make or break our hormone experience. And then finally, we'll implement a systematic and strategic actionable strategy to balance your hormones with step by step practices to create your own healing breakthroughs. So, before I go into that a little bit deeply, I'd like to share a few more stories from women who went through this process with me, and this was just their reflection. So, Carla in Australia, in Sydney, said, I just wanted to express my gratitude for your amazing detective work in the discovery of the parasite and low progesterone in my body. It simply explains everything, and I can't thank you enough. I just wanted to express my gratitude. You do such amazing and transformative work. And then Angela in Santa Cruz said, Bree is a miracle worker. I'm indebted to her for life. Aw. Before coming to her, I saw so many doctors and alternative practitioners, and none of them could tell me what was going on with my health. I feel so helpless and exhausted. She recommended adrenal hormone testing, and from those results, she diagnosed my stage 3 adrenal fatigue, which I'd never heard of at the time. At that point, I wasn't only in bad shape physically, but I had also been trying to get pregnant for over a year without success. Bree gave me a supplement protocol and explained the root of this condition that made me realize the mental and emotional pieces of my lifestyle that needed to be addressed as well. The protocol she subscribed and taking a holistic approach allowed me to overcome this condition and get pregnant all within about 4 months. It was an incredible transformation. I went on to have an amazing pregnancy. My baby boy is the healthiest little guy I know. I have so much gratitude for Bree, and I was so inspired that I decided to devote my life's work to helping other adrenal fatigue sufferers who are lost and not getting answers recover holistically. Thanks, Bree. So Angela started a business called the Adrenal Recovery Collective, and they do amazing work. Check them out online. They also help women with lifestyle and nutritional steps that often accompany some of the testing and work that we do in my clinic. And then Pamela in New York City said, working with Bree and her team has been like a breath of fresh air after many years of feeling suffocated and invisible in the Western healthcare system. I finally feel like someone can see the whole comprehensive picture. It's only been 2 weeks since we reviewed my lab results, and Bree gave me my supplement plan and nutritional plan, and I feel so much better. My acne is fading. I wake up with energy and stay stable throughout the day. My thoughts are clear and sharp. Cutting out caffeine and sugar and processed carbs sounded really intimidating at first, but with Bree's support, I did it, and I'm so glad that I did. I can see a brighter horizon ahead. So, here's how to start this process with me today. The first step is an in depth 1 hour hormone case review where you will work with myself or one of my doctors who work with me. And together, we'll do a deep dive into your personal health history and identify hidden connections starting from childhood through present day to help identify what the triggers are that have led to your current symptoms. The most important part is to discover which of the root cause testing you need for your type. But every patient that I work with is a little different. And so we customize the testing that we recommend based on everything we learn about you at this first appointment, which is why it's so critical. So during the appointment, we'll identify factors that are most likely impacting your hormones and which custom root cause testing you need for your type. We'll provide custom diet and supplementation recommendations that you can start right away based specifically on your type to at least help bring you some relief as quickly as possible while we wait for lab results. We'll go over a detailed health plan for the next 6 months so that you have a clear path to healing, which for some of you listening might be the first time that you'll see a light at the end of the tunnel. And then we set a plan for regular check ins to review the lab work and then to support you as you complete the steps in your treatment program so that you have accountability and the support you need to be successful. Now, again, with I get a lot of questions about lab work and about working with us. And I just wanted to say it does not matter where you are. Again, we have a telemedicine practice for the last 7 years. And so we're really experienced at helping people carry those things out wherever they're located. So after that 1 hour case review, we get the labs run, and then we meet again to review the lab results together and make an action plan with a treatment timeline. The labs help us to prioritize which of the root causes need to be addressed in you specifically to heal your hormones. So, stress response, blood sugar, gut health, liver detox, or other factors. And we work with nutritional changes, lifestyle, supplements, and also mindset and stress management techniques. Each protocol we use has a beginning and an end. So we never prescribe supplements that you're expected to take ongoing forever. Our goal is to restore your physiology in order to resolve symptoms. And then you get accountability and coaching through your journey. So you check in with your practitioner periodically to review how the plan is working for you and tweaking it as needed. Extra appointments and continued coaching are always available as needed. So I would be really honored to help you in this way and support you. Normally, this first step appointment is 325, but as a special thank you for staying with me, I wanted to offer you a webinar discount to save an extra $50. So I am going to share a private link with you right now below the video. Here we go. So that link will take you to a page where you can book a session, and that includes the discount for a total of 275 instead of the initial cost of 325. So if for any reason that button doesn't show up for you, you can also go to this private URL down here, which is brieweiselman.com/book now, or you can email my office at clientcare@brieweiselman.com. There's also a link to email us on the website. So I do want to let you know that this limited time offer is just for the next 3 days. It will expire in 3 days. So please book your session now while it's still available because we are definitely getting a lot of requests. So once you're on the checkout page, you enter your billing information, and as soon as your order is approved, you'll get instant access to the scheduling software to book an appointment with my team. After you schedule, you'll be taken to intake paperwork forms, and that gives me everything we need for your first appointment. Even if you choose to see one of the doctors who works with me, Claire or Nancy, I personally review every case with them weekly and monitor progress. So it's kind of like you're getting two docs for the price of one. All right, so I would like to go on to Q&A. So I'm going to go over to the chat and see some of the questions here. So let's see. All right. So someone Camille asked, does this include natural hormone therapy? So I think what you mean is bioidentical hormone replacement. And so to answer that question, we do utilize bioidentical hormones at times when they're appropriate. It depends on the case, but usually we're using them while we're doing other things underlying with the root causes in order to get you to a point where you don't have symptoms and may or may not need to use those hormones ongoing. And more often, it's short term. So we'll often use low doses of the bioidentical adrenal hormones in certain people. And again, the way we use these things is a little bit different. We don't tend to use them as hormone replacement. We use them as to help restore your own signaling. So we're using them in microdoses and rhythmically and for a certain period of time. And sometimes we do use progesterone or estradiol replacement as well. Okay, and then let's see. Rachel said, I'm years post birth control and have terrible acne. It's insane. I'm so sorry to hear that, Rachel. You don't have to live with that, and that can be so frustrating. I remember having adult acne, and it's just terrible. Okay, and then let's see. Um, will the slides be available after the webinar? Yeah, they will be. So the whole thing is being recorded, and you will get recordings of those things after, if you signed up for the webinar and you're here, you'll get actually a replay and the slides included. And okay, let's see. Will the forms let us know how much testing costs? No, we don't list that on the forms just because everybody gets different testing. It's really based on what you need, Rachel. But what we do is if you have any, so in the first appointment, we then make a health plan that's unique to you. We'll write down any of our recommendations for you. That's accompanied by a personalized shopping cart where then you'll see the cost of anything and you can edit the cart and take things out, add things in as needed. And my clinic admin is always there to help you with that. If you had questions about some of the lab testing before even scheduling, you can email for some of those costs. But just know that we won't know exactly what labs we would be recommending for you specifically. And then in terms of insurance, so we can't bill insurance for appointments just because of the way we work. Some people who have like flex accounts or HSAs can sometimes use those to cover some of those expenses. So we welcome that. In terms of insurance and labs, though, we do help facilitate that where possible. So some of the labs, the lab itself is the lab company is in network with insurance. And so for that reason, we're able to give you information about how to verify with your insurance company what is and isn't covered. So often you'll just have a copay for the cost of the lab. That's actually with like the organic acids testing and a lot of the stool testing we use, the SIBO breath testing, that's frequently the case, and a bunch of the other testing. All right. Okay, let's see. So I think I also have a question about oh, difficulty with sleep. Okay, so irregular cycles, cortisol versus progesterone versus blood sugar and estrogen. Right. So I was talking about um, sleeping and sleep problems a lot during this presentation. And you'll recognize that a lot of women had sleep issues. And then a lot of them kind of look the same like, oh, I'm laying there falling asleep and having a hard time, or I'm waking frequently and having a hard time getting back to sleep, or some combination or other issue. And the truth is that those can all be symptoms. For example, like trouble falling asleep is more often a low progesterone thing and or a high cortisol thing. But the truth is there can be other drivers. So it can also relate to neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which I didn't mention, but are also things that we can assess in people, as well as very, very commonly blood sugar. So, and then frequent waking is often an estrogen thing, depending on the person and the picture you're looking at, but it can also be a high cortisol thing. And it can also be a blood sugar thing. So, what I will tell you is that because all those hormones are contingent upon um, on blood sugar stability, even like before any of them exist, one of the very first things we do with people is just take a look at what they're eating and when they're eating through the day and see if there are small tweaks we can make. Often it's just small adjustments that are needed to get that glucose rock solid stable without spikes and crashes during the day. And I will tell you that even without working with a practitioner like myself, if you even do that work on your own, and if one of your main concerns are sleep issues, you'll find that the more stable you can keep your blood sugar during the day, the better quality sleep and the ease of sleep you'll have at night. Okay, so let's see. Lizelle sent me an email. So Lizelle, I'm not able to reach out to you, so I would recommend clicking on either the book now button or emailing my team, or using the link, the breeweiselman.com book now. And Anita asked, can we forward the recording to others who could benefit if they hadn't signed up? Um, yeah, if hopefully, yes, you can do that. You can actually do that. Although, just keep in mind that the link to schedule is only for 3 days, and it's actually, I think, only available here to you in the webinar. So if they do watch it in the next 3 days and they want to email my team or use the book now link that's on the screen right now, then we'll absolutely honor that. And thank you so much. I'm honored that you would think to share it with people that you care about. Let's see. Lizelle said, where is the book now button? Are you guys not seeing that? Let me make sure. It should be below the slides. Um, can someone let me know if they can see it? Okay, Rachel said she can see it. It's above though. Okay. Okay, so it's above the chat. Yeah, so sometimes depending on what browser you're using, the program will put that button somewhere else. So again, if for some reason the button's not working or you're not seeing it, just go to www.breeweiselman.com book now, or feel free to email my team, which is clientcare@breeweiselman.com. And in a pinch, you can just go to my website and use the contact form, and we will get to you that way. Okay, Ola said, how do you work with thyroid? I think that's what that means, and what do you use to restore function? Oh, okay. Well, that's a huge topic that we could do a whole nother webinar on. So let me try and give you something of value here. So when someone's main concern is thyroid, the thyroid is kind of like the canary in the coal mine. It's like the first thing that'll go off balance when there's a problem. And the thing is that some thyroid function is actually a thyroid problem or a direct hypothyroidism from the brain. But more often, it's actually influenced by things like the adrenals, gut, and detox system, or any other cause of inflammation. So, the first thing I do would be obviously test thyroid hormones if the person's not already coming in with a full thyroid panel, which would include thyroid antibodies and more metabolites than just TSH and T4, which are the main ones people will have run. And I would, make sure where in the chain of signaling is the problem with thyroid. Like, is it actually at the level of thyroid? Is it the level of the brain? Or is it hormone conversion downstream and it's not actually a thyroid problem? And then I would think about all the things that influence thyroid function. So, for example, the adrenal hormones, so cortisol levels, radically influence metabolism of and creation of thyroid hormone. I would look at the gut because that's gut and liver are where we convert inactive thyroid hormone into the active form. I would look at any drivers of inflammation in general because inflammation will cause your thyroid hormone or active thyroid hormone to go down, and something called reverse T3, which inhibits thyroid um, function in the cells, in the receptor sites, to go up. So I would look at that. So basically, when you say, how do I work with thyroid? um, we're often looking to understand why. Like, why is the thyroid off? And sometimes it's just low nutrient levels, or someone has um, not enough amino acids, things like that. So we use lab tests to identify all that. And then sometimes there are supplements we would use that have natural glandulars temporarily, but I will tell you that more often than not, we don't even need to do those things. Or we can work with someone who's already on thyroid replacement, whether it's synthetic or natural, to try and at least reduce their symptoms, improve thyroid hormone function, and occasionally to taper them off their meds with their prescribing physician if that's appropriate for that person. Okay. Oh, got it. Okay, so Lizelle, you said you're on a cell phone. Yes, no problem. I get that the link doesn't work as well on the cell. So you can get the link later, or please don't hesitate to contact my team. Thanks for letting me know about that. All right. I think that kind of answers everybody's questions. And so I just want to wrap up by saying thank you so much. I am so honored and thank you for spending the last hour with me. It's been a pleasure to get to share with you just a little bit of what I've learned over the last 17 years of working with women just like you all over the world. And please don't hesitate to be in touch if there's any way that I can be of service. I'll see you in the clinic. Take good care, everyone.